Hello and welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, and the unconditional love of the universe. And I am your host. My name is Tricia Carr. Welcome to this episode. I have to stress to you that the tools and technologies that are talked about in this episode with my special, amazing guest work. Why? Because since we actually did this conversation, I waited a bit to actually record this piece, this introduction, and I have been using the tool that is recommended. Now, there's my little tease, and let me make a few invitations to you as we dive into this awesome episode with my special guest. Her name is April Adams, but what I want to invite you to do is please do subscribe or follow, whatever it is that your app presents to you. And a special invitation, if you love this episode too, well, share it. Let people know about it. That would help me so much. It would be such a blessing to me, as well as scroll down in your app whenever you pull over your car, whenever you get to your destination, and leave me a review. That would be so amazing. Again, if you love this, I would love for you to share it and leave a review. And I would also like to invite you to check out my website. I don't always mention the website, even though I mentioned some services, and it is triciacarcharm.com, y'all. I just did a rebranding, and I am in love with it because it has new colors that I'm vibing with right now, a fresh new logo, some new photos taken by my friend Carson Doherty's husband. His name is Chris Gower Photography. If you are in Los Angeles, he does amazing work, but those plugs aside, also I have services available there. So triciacarcharm.com. I have Instagram at triciacarcharm. Follow me there. And of course, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/triciacar. Now, onto the episode about ending empathic overwhelm and honestly about removing emotional pain and overwhelm of all kinds. My special guest today is April Adams. She is an emotional health consultant specializing in removing resentment, worries, longing, emotional triggers, and self-sabotage. April's primary tool is an evidence-based audio track that is designed to get to the root of any emotional issue and unplug the negative emotional charge attached to it on the subconscious level of the mind. April loves working with empaths and women having relationship challenges. She has been in the nurturing industry for over 25 years and is the author of 2 Amazon best-selling books. We call this episode Ending Empathic Overwhelm, and we first talk about that special tool that she is referring to in the evidence-based audio track. It is a form of many different types of hypnosis, and many different modalities, honestly, are put into this particular technology. We talk about that, and I got to tell you, that will help to prime you to release the empathic overwhelm. But of course, we talk about the perspectives of what the empathic tool and function really is. And it's really amazing because we have a lot of similar perspectives. We channeled a lot of similar stuff. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. I wanted to make sure that you listen all the way through to the end to get to that empath stuff. But seriously, lean in closely to talk as we talk about this particular tool, because y'all have been using it. Anyway, now, welcome to this conversation with April Adams, and I'll chat with you on the other side. Well, April, I'm so excited to connect with you today on the podcast, and your work is just so fascinating to me. So I think we have a lot in common too. So as usual, very excited to become best friends in this next 30, 45 minutes, hour, however long we're chatting. So everyone, this is April Adams, and I would love to let everyone know about your journey and this very interesting and contribution that you're making to our world, the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been pumped all weekend, like waiting to talk to you. And I absolutely love everything about this work. So I'm really pleased and honored to be able to share this with you and your audience. So I'll start off by saying I'm an emotional health consultant. So I help people basically remove the negative emotional reactivity from whatever it is that's bothering them in their lives. So it's kind of like undoing the damage life has done and allowing you to return to your truest version of self. because we're
Yeah.
not our traumas. We're not the bad things that happen to us or the coping mechanisms we've developed to deal with those things. So, work that I do is all about getting people back to that true self that isn't all about just coping with the
Mhm.
difficulties and traumas and limiting beliefs and all of that we form because of the hard stuff that happens in life sometimes. So that's where I've ended up. That's what I'm doing now. But we all have our stories. We all have reasons why we get into doing this work in the first place. So, my big thing, the struggle that led me to doing work on myself first and then on other people as well was that I, first of all, just personality wise, was extremely controlling and needy.
Isn't that weird how those go hand in hand?
Yes,
It's
yes.
like the neediness says control me, but then it also says I control you. Yeah.
Uh
It's a
huh.
attachment thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And where that really showed up most of all was whenever the honeymoon phase would end in a relationship.
Mm. Yeah.
And I would be literally devastated whenever the honeymoon phase would end. And I went around trying to change my partners back into who they were when we first fell in love and trying to get all of that, amazing yumminess back over and over again. And one day I was just on the bathroom floor in tears, in the fetal position, going, why does this always happen to me?
Yeah.
And then I had my big aha moment like, oh, this is me.
I'm the common denominator. Damn
Exactly.
it.
That's how I always say it too. I was the common denominator in all of the relationships.
Mhm.
They were fine with the end of the honeymoon phase, and I was not. So
Yeah.
then I set out to figure out what was wrong with me. Why did I need that and they didn't? Now, I'm well aware that plenty of people feel they need that. So that's kind of why I'm here. But just that realization that it was me, that it was something in me that had that need that not everyone had, that had me aware of the fact there was some work for me to do.
Yeah.
So I set out to go to therapy. I was reading a lot of relationship and self-help books, mindset books. I took a Reiki class, and that opens all kinds of doors.
Mm.
I feel
It
like
does.
that's the gateway drug, just
Totally. I love it.
so I took a Reiki class. I immediately fell in love with the energy and felt a deep connection. It brought me to spirituality and mindfulness and channeling messages and healing other people and all of these other things, which were wonderful. But no matter what I did, I still was obsessive
Mm.
about my romantic relationship. And I could ignore it, I could talk myself down from it. But I always had these thoughts in the back of my mind of like, why isn't it like it used to be?
Yeah.
And no matter what I did, it wouldn't go away. So I figured out all these great coping mechanisms. And I figured out a lot of ways to make it a little bit better, to take it down a notch, to peel a layer of that onion,
Mhm.
or ways to get temporary relief from the suffering, but it would always come back.
Yeah.
And I was tired of it. I found it exhausting. I was like, how many effing layers are there to this? For the love
Oh
of
my
God.
gosh.
How many
Yes.
times do I have to work on the same thing before it's finally going to go? So then I finally got the message from the universe to deal with things on the subconscious level. And
Mhm.
in 2015, I was channeling message after message, and they just kept saying, deal with the subconscious mind. If you want better results for yourself, for your clients, you've got to deal with the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And so I started trying every subconscious modality I could get my hands on. I tried EMDR, EFT, hypnosis, NLP, all of these different techniques. And they worked faster than mindfulness and talk therapy and mindset work and all of that. But it still was an issue. It was still showing up. It was still in the back of my mind constantly. So I'm like, okay, still it's not completely gone. Or the things that I was able to get long-term relief on took several rounds
Mhm.
before they would finally go. And then one day somebody said, "Hey, have you heard about this particular tool?" And so the tools that I work with now are through Orpheus Mind Technologies. I didn't create these tools. These are tools that I was, kind of pushed toward, that are just so brilliant and take all of the most amazing science into one set of tools. So it basically takes everything that's been proven effective into one method.
Mm.
So, where all of the different subconscious modalities have certain holes, certain, lack, but also they each have their own amazing gifts and improvements that they can bring about. When you put them all together, they fill in each other's blanks. So you've got this layered method that is like this 12-minute audio track that you do while you think about what's bothering you. And it helps to just convince your subconscious that you're safe in the face of that perceived thing.
Mm.
And a lot of people do just find removal in 1 or 2 rounds. So we're talking about like lifetime issues being resolved in 12 to 24 minutes, when before it might take 6 to 10 rounds of hypnosis or EMDR to take care of it, or uh, a lifetime of mindfulness to take care of it, to be able to just move on in under a half hour from things. And that's the results that I started to find using these tools on myself. And that's why this is the main thing that I focus on now.
Wow.
So that's been my journey so far, and why I'm standing on every rooftop I can find, yelling to everybody, please do the subconscious work.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. Okay, Orpheus Mind Technology? Orpheus
Yes.
Mind. Okay. And so you work with a particular audio. Is it something that you created, or is it something that comes from Orpheus? Or, I mean,
Yeah,
how does the
it's
whole system work together?
yes. So it basically, my part in it is to
Yeah.
show people how to use these tools to get long-term relief from things. So basically, I talk to people about what their issues are, what their goals are, and then I tell them what to think about while they play these tracks to get
Yeah.
the results that they want. So that's really the role that I fill.
I get it.
But the tracks themselves are currently available as self-help tools. And Orpheus it's kind of like the Netflix of emotional healing, where it's a
Okay.
subscription service, and they have all kinds of different things. They have the destroyer tracks, which is the main tool that I usually start out with people, and that's the one that removes the negative emotional reactivity from
Mhm.
things. So it basically removes the trigger. But there are also all of these tools for different compulsions and cravings and addictions. So to stop smoking, to be able to cut down on drinking or stop drinking, whatever your choice is. There's gambling and porn tracks, all kinds of things that basically convince the subconscious you don't want to do that thing anymore. That's not serving you. And I do find that they're very amazing because they not only deal with the symptom, but
Mhm.
they also deal with the roots, the reason why you're doing the thing. So the whole system is built to not just be a band aid. Where I find a lot of times, when you go for one of those giant seminars to lose weight through hypnosis, they're just addressing the symptom, they're addressing the behavior that you have to overeat or whatever you're doing. They're not addressing the emotional reasons why you're doing the thing.
Mhm.
And this system is all about addressing the emotional reasons why you're driven to do those things and the cravings and compulsions themselves.
Yeah, you have to work symptomatically as well as to the root. And
Yeah,
not to denigrate any particular CBT or talk therapy, but sometimes depends on the practitioner, depends on the therapist. Sometimes they only work on the painful and then that, they kind of just rehash them, and then there's
right,
almost a period of being re-traumatized before you even start to get to the part where there's release or relief, right?
right.
So
Yes,
that, I mean, again, that's just an extreme example, but that is the experience some people have. So
yeah,
this, it also sounds like what EMDR does, but from a different input, obviously. And is it, I'm assuming it is something along the lines of different frequencies, monaural, binaural technologies that are actually
no,
stimulating. It's not.
it's not.
Oh,
No.
okay. So,
This is a combination of, so you know how during hypnosis there is the speaking,
Hmm.
basically the commands to the subconscious mind. So it
Sure.
includes that part of hypnosis. It doesn't include the relaxy, sleepy, the more ephemeral kinds of hypnosis. It actually uses what I call distraction hypnosis.
Yeah.
So in, the whole concept behind hypnosis is to get the conscious mind out of the way so
Hmm.
we can access the subconscious and create change on that level. And
And you can
so,
either do that by relaxing the critical
yes,
mind, or you can do it by disrupting the critical mind and creating gaps in it. And so this
right.
is creates the anxiety, not anxiety like what we think about anxiety, but it really
Yeah,
is on the critical mind. It disrupts it.
right.
It
Yeah, it creates
agitates it.
a distraction so
Hmm.
that the conscious mind is paying attention to something
Yeah.
else
Hmm.
rather than trying to, well, typically you would relax the conscious mind so
Yeah.
much it's out of the way and it's kind of sleepy or whatever. Instead, we're giving the conscious mind a job to do, to
Hmm.
keep it busy, so that it's busy over there going, oh, am I doing this activity correctly?
Hmm.
And then the words on the track are able to access the subconscious mind. There's also the bilateral stimulation element of
Okay.
EMDR. So with
Okay.
EMDR, typically like the old, the way that people used to do it, and some people still do, just moving your eyes in a certain pattern
Hmm.
helps to activate both sides of your brain. So you're in a whole brain state. But you can also achieve that by any kind of bilateral stimulation of your body. So if you're tapping your hands alternately or something like that, you also get that same stimulation of both sides of your brain. So you're in a whole brain state while you're processing a traumatic event so that it can work on it to remove it from the amygdala so you're not having the fight or flight response to it anymore. So it's using those elements, it's using very specific language. So it's similar to NLP or neuro linguistic programming language, but it's essentially just getting the subconscious mind to sit up and pay attention. So even if you weren't under any form of hypnosis or anything like that, your subconscious is still going to be zoning in on what's being said.
Hmm.
Now, the most amazing part to me is the guy who created this system used to be a computer programmer.
I
So
love it.
he has spent his whole life enamored of the subconscious mind and what the brain is capable of. And he learned all about computer programming, and he started to notice similarities between
Hmm.
how the human brain and how a computer process language patterns and information. And so essentially, he's figured out how to rewire the
How to
human
hack it.
computer.
To hack
Yes,
our brains, right? Which we all want to
exactly.
do. Well, and
Yes,
it's not surprising the human brain created the computer brain. So it's
yes,
like it's the
yes.
child, not mine. I'm not I didn't create it, but you know what I mean. A better brain than mine created it. So hey, it can work on mine.
Yeah, it's incredibly brilliant. So, there's a lot of proven
Mhm.
formulas and techniques in this, and there are also some new innovative techniques that are put into this. And bringing them together tends to get faster and more lasting results.
Yeah.
And that's why I use these. I mean, I do believe that EFT and EMDR
Mhm.
and hypnosis do work if you apply them correctly and you keep going back until the issue is taken care of. I have just found that these tools in particular get you faster, longer lasting results than those other techniques have. But I do find that it's kind of all part of the same puzzle. You
Mhm.
go to therapy and you get your feelings validated and you feel heard and you're able to process through why you struggle with certain things, and you start to work on your mindset and you start reframing your thoughts on the conscious level, and I think all of that is important. And connecting with your own spiritual self and your higher self and your own inner wisdom, I think all of that is incredibly important. I really feel like the subconscious work is just that final puzzle piece. When we do all of that work on ourselves and we still find we're struggling with the same issues and tired of peeling the layers, that's when you can go to the subconscious work and just kind of finish things off so that you're not stuck in those same loops and patterns forever.
And now for these messages. Creation of the outside world really does start inside. You can feel better and receive more. Miraculous shifts happen when you align your inner world with your higher self and your soul blueprint. My clients report immediate and long-lasting results of the inner and outer world. I channel guidance and energy transmissions from your higher self and spirit team. As you resonate with the transmission, change occurs. In sessions and coaching, mentoring, I use my abilities of empathic channeling, hypnohealing, quantum resonance healing, as well as spiritual counseling, neurolinguistic programming, and so much more. Check out my calendar for my session work and my coaching and mentoring. I would love to work in your beautiful energy. Lightshine Academy presents the 2022 Channeling Intensive. Open your divine channel to higher consciousness, cosmic intelligences, and source energy. This program begins the week of May 9th, 2022. This is an innovative and groundbreaking intensive designed specifically to connect you to spirit so you can draw down potent, useful, and transformative energy. The education you will receive will equip you to have dynamic and evidential encounters in the world of spirit. The experiences you will have will put you up close and personal with your own divine channeling team. We will meet live and online for education and coaching over the course of this 8-week program. Expect your life to change drastically as new information, energy, revelations, and love pours into you, through you, by the way of spiritual channeling. Crystal Ann Compton and I invite you to check it out at class.lightshineacademy.com/2022CI. This intensive is not to be missed. We hope to see you in the 2022 Channeling Intensive. So, from what you just said, ideally, we're doing all of the work anyway,
Yeah.
whether with professionals and on one's own.
Mhm.
And then that's how the results would be so effective. And so is it a place where someone can start and then maybe it just is going to be a longer path if they're starting with this, you know what I mean? As opposed to someone who's like done all of that other work and come,
Yeah.
come totally
So
primed.
it's a good question, actually. So personally, I tend to only work with people who have been doing the work on themselves because
Mhm.
I really just want to get to
Yeah.
the nitty gritty and help them figure out how to take care of something once and for all.
Yeah.
But the tools themselves are available to anybody and everybody. And there was a recent study done on these tools with people who had not been doing a ton of work on themselves already, who all had PTSD diagnoses. And two of them, I think it was 10 people in the study, two of them had been diagnosed with PTSD and had been, by the end of 2 rounds, so 24 minutes or less, no longer qualified as having PTSD
Amazing.
after 24 minutes. The other ones all scored, so the other 8 ended up scoring higher on their happiness levels and had a decrease in their reactivity to the issue at hand.
Mhm.
So you can use it on
Mhm.
any kind of trauma you've been through, and most people see relief in 1 or 2 rounds and will likely see relief across the board for everybody if you do as many rounds as it takes to get that particular issue down to a zero as far as how
Mhm.
emotionally intense you are around that thing. So it really depends person to person, but it's amazing how often during first time sessions with people when I'm showing them these tools that they will come in with something that's like a level 7 or 8 out of 10, and by the end of that first round are looking at me like, where the heck did it go? I can't find any feeling about that thing at all. Like, I still have the same opinion and thought about it, but I have no reactivity to that. I'm just kind of
Mhm.
like, what was the big deal? Why was that bothering me so much?
Yeah, I've had that with some of the like I've told this story before on my podcast or in different areas. There was like when this profound trauma of being abused when I was a child, and I was reactive to it, and I was driving. I was like in my 40s. I am in my 40s now, but I was like I was in my 40s, and I wanted to release. I was listening to someone say, "We want to release unforgiveness because you're really just holding yourself in,
Mm,
you
hmm.
know, in a prison, and I totally understand that intellectually, but I think about the incidents and I think about the person, the aggressor, and I have the reaction. And so I was driving. I pulled over my car and I probably was doing some bilateral brain stimulation and tapping because I was pounding on my
Yes.
steering wheel,
Yeah, good.
mad. And I
Yep.
was calling out to angels and said, I don't know how to release this, but I'm saying that I'm willing to release it. And and then I just kept driving. And then I realized like a month or some amount of weeks later that like you're describing, it was just the reaction was gone. And I remember I was so frustrated because I was like, do I need a lobotomy? I don't understand. I remember it. I react. I mean, like, how do you take away? And so what it feels like now is it's of course I remember it and like maybe I have the same opinion, but it's almost like I watched a movie. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like the feeling, I
exactly.
recall it, but I don't react to it. I don't have a stimulation from it. It's just something that happened. And I can still access it as a resource
Right.
as a lesson, as something I've achieved, grown from. It's only the good stuff that's left.
Exactly. And that's part of what people are afraid of with doing this kind of work. They're
Yes,
afraid that
it's
it's going to make
identity.
them complacent, or yeah,
I
they
know.
they identify as the victim and they don't know who they are without the damage. But that's a big part of what I end up talking to people about is
Mhm.
shifting that sense of, if I don't have that reaction, if I'm not angry about that thing that happened to me, then I'm not protected. I'm not protecting myself anymore.
And it's actually the
Or
opposite that's true.
right. Yeah, yeah.
It's
And I mean,
active in you and you attract it then because
yes.
your subconscious mind is trying to resolve it. It's just your subconscious mind is
Yeah.
just obeying you. "Oh, this is what we're
Yeah.
interested in? Here it is." Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. And
Mhm.
people think that they have to be stressed out to be
Mhm.
motivated.
I know.
And you can't plan in a creative way. You can't be grounded and plan and create what you want when you're stressed out. You're not
Mhm.
going to be able to calmly problem solve or get really creative or tap into your higher wisdom if you're using stress to motivate yourself. So people have all of these perceptions that their negative emotions are either protecting them, motivating them, keeping them safe, whatever, and it's not actually the case. And like you
Yeah.
said, we're manifesting negative things and we are expecting negative things and kind of bracing for them when we're holding on to those negative emotions and wounds.
The negative emotions, well, all emotions, but heightened, let's say just say heightened emotions are so, um they feel so strongly and in the body and they take that psychic energy, the all of the energy and it overrides the intuition because it's so strong feeling in the body. But when we have so many of the negative ones, it's it we think that's being alive. It gets associated with being alive, which is another way to say it gets associated with your identity or your capacity to keep surviving. And it's in fact killing us because it constricts
Yes.
blood flow and creates
Yeah.
disease and injury. Yeah.
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 Exactly. When we fixate on all of those emotions and we go
Mhm.
swimming around in them, then that does create our identity, like how
Yeah.
we identify ourselves in the world. And I know when we're young, it feels nice to romanticize our emotions and feelings. I know when I was in high school, yeah, I'm going to age myself here. The song "Nothing Compares to You" by Sinead
Mm.
O'Connor.
Mhm.
I would listen to that song, and I was in a perfectly healthy romantic relationship, and I would fantasize about the day that I was going to get my heart broken so that I could be like, "Oh, it's been 7 hours and 15 days." Like, and
Yeah.
so now I look back at that, I'm like, how ridiculous that we romanticize
Mhm.
getting our hearts broken. We romanticize grief as honoring people, that we
Yeah.
romanticize our anger as protecting us. And so we identify that roller coaster with being human when really it's just a flaw in evolution.
Mhm.
Because, yes, our ancestors needed to be on guard.
They needed to run from lions, and we don't.
Yes.
Fortunately,
Yes.
we don't have to. So really, our fight flight is way less necessary, but we activate
Yeah.
it just as much.
Yes, and we're activating it about a bill we have to pay or something rude somebody says on social media or getting your heart broken instead of, actual life threats.
Mhm.
So we're reacting to things at that level like it's a survival level threat when it is clearly not. And I feel that doing this work is all about getting the subconscious and conscious mind on that same level of
Mhm.
wisdom, of recognizing I'm safe in this situation. I do not need to be so reactive here. And in fact, I can live a much better life if I'm not constantly riding a roller coaster.
Mhm. It's addictive because the hormones that are produced in and even endorphins when we're in fight flight, and then when we come off of that, then it's like, I don't know, we need to somehow get back in that swing. So we just if you just stop that basically and just be okay with it and have some kind of stability around it and accept, then
Mm,
maybe mindset comes in, right?
yeah,
That's where the mindset piece and the just spiritual piece can be like, this new normal is good. It's not just okay, it's good. And
yeah,
this
yeah,
is not just surviving, this is thriving,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I find usually about halfway through the work that I do with most people, they get to a place where they go, now that I'm not riding that roller coaster anymore, I feel numb or bored a lot. Like, well,
Read a book.
like,
Go
okay, so
on a
you're
walk.
I know, yeah. And they're of course tempted to start some drama with somebody or
Uh-huh.
whatever.
Mhm.
And
Are you sure
so
I'm still alive?
yeah, yeah. Are you sure? So actually you can use the audio track on the numbness because even though
Mm,
numbness feels like a lack of feeling or boredom feels like a lack of feeling, it is actually another feeling. It's another reaction. And
mhm.
so you can basically use that same track you would use on a negative emotion to deal with a somewhat neutral emotion that you're in resistance to.
Yeah,
And it can also make you more comfortable with that. But I also tell people that's the time when you want to start exploring what you would love. Now
yeah.
that you're not so wrapped up in what you hate about life, figure out what you love.
Yeah.
Take some classes, get some new friends, start going out and doing things. Like, you don't have to create emotional drama in order to create excitement, or even just blast some music you love, or go ride
Mhm.
an actual roller coaster. But
Yeah.
do something to create positive emotional reactions instead of going looking for the familiar old negative ones.
Can that numbness, as that they would say, as some of these people feel that it is, can it be reframed as peace? Is that something that would be,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
because peace isn't, like, activated, peace isn't heightened, but it
Right.
feels good, it's positive.
Yes.
Mhm,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
mhm,
And I pretty much live my life in that place most of the
mhm.
time.
Yeah.
And it's funny because before I started really hardcore doing this work and seeing the results, my big goal was happiness. Like I was like, I want to be happy all the time. And you're picturing this excitement and this bliss and and once you get to peace, it's kind of like, I don't care about all that. I'm just at peace.
Yeah,
I'm just happy to not be constantly neurotic. So I think I'll just enjoy that for a while.
yeah. And then do people, report to you, obviously we do the inner work and we have the inner shifting, and then the outside world catches up to it. Although sometimes, universe works really fast or
Mm,
creation can work
hmm.
really fast. And it's like, I remember one time I had probably been doing deep work, deep work, deep work. And then I had this one session just with myself. And then on Monday, I had a powerful manifestation. Like everything changed and I was okay with it. That was the thing. I was
Yeah.
somatically non-responsive to it. That was my biggest victory. Not even like the good thing that was happening. I was like, change is happening and I'm okay with it. But anyway,
Uh huh.
so how do you talk about the outside results that your clients or people that do this, or yourself even, when you do this work and you feel amazing, peace, whatever it is, the removal of those emotions, then how does the outside world start to
Right.
change around it?
Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous how much things tend to change externally.
Mhm.
In my own relationship, when I healed the need to be wanted all the time, which was where that challenge around the honeymoon phase came from. So I was able to heal that. And without communicating anything about it, my partner changed. Like, I had been putting all of these expectations and had these tendrils of need that I was constantly reaching out to her with. And after healing that, those just went. And I didn't tell her I healed that. I didn't tell her I did rounds specifically on that or anything. And she suddenly became far more relaxed around me
That's
and
so
actually
cool.
much more of that honeymoon version of herself than she had been in quite some time when I was constantly at her to become what I was
She wasn't
wishing that.
having running
Right,
away. Well, yeah,
right.
isn't what's so beautiful, the takeaway that I have from this story is, like, you became more of who you really are, and therefore she had room to be who she really is in your partnership. That's
Yes. Yeah.
so beautiful.
And I hear it so often because a lot of the people who come to work with me are people who have been struggling with relationship issues, and they do see that. It's kind of a 50-50 shot because a lot of people come to me already aware of the fact that they want to end their relationship and just kind of want
Mm,
permission to do it.
mm, that's sad, yeah.
And so I help them kind of find their own empowerment and deal with their fears and resistance to actually stepping up and doing it. um, but then also, on the other hand, the people who are very on the fence, like, they know this is a good, healthy, beautiful, respectful, equal relationship, but there's just this one aspect of it that I can't let go of, that I am just so fixated on what is lacking there, I can't appreciate the rest of it, which was
Yeah.
my situation, but is also the situation of so many people out there.
Mhm.
So many women, have these fabulous relationships, but can't appreciate it because this one emotional need isn't being met.
Mm,
And so I tell people, if you're not in a toxic or abusive relationship, stick around, see where it triggers you, use the relationship and the things you feel are lacking there to heal those patterns of lack throughout your life. And once
yeah.
you've healed those, then you can step back and make your decision about whether that relationship resonates with you anymore. But you're not making it from a place of lack and emotionality. You're making it from a place of, okay, I'm whole and complete regardless of what's going on in the relationship. Does this relationship add any value to my life or not? And-
Yes, that's so well articulated because, it's like if you jump from one situation in a reactive state to another, you're gonna create it again, and that could be with
right.
jobs, or it could be with relationships. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm describing my 20s for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
I'd leave
yeah.
one job because it was terrible, and it would be the same thing only with different names. And so it's like the energy needs to be processed, or the subconscious needs
Right.
to. So that's
Yeah.
that the way you're describing that is so beautiful. If it's not abusive, of course, if there's
Right.
physical, mental, emotional damage
Yes.
happening,
Get out.
out today, now,
Hmm.
immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but yeah, then after you do the work, after you do the clearing, then you have the clarity to know if maybe you do then come together. And how beautiful is that story too?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Hmm.
that's the advice I always give, about relationships or jobs. If you're in
Yeah.
a job or a relationship that you keep nitpicking and you're not really satisfied there, but it's not toxic or whatever, then I say stay there until you get your crap figured out from that scenario so that you're not bringing it to the next situation, whatever that is, whether it's staying in that place or whether it's moving on to something else. Now you're not bringing your own baggage from
You don't
place to
have to.
place.
Yeah, you aren't bringing your baggage. You don't have to start over again, because you know what I mean.
Yes, right.
With hope, and then started it. Yeah, you could just hey, I'm starting at step 10 of this place. And so you've already done it's, in a way, there's already a lot of the work processed, and so might as well finish up the job
Right.
and see where we are.
Yeah.
So approximate I mean, so you work with these people, and maybe they have one or two of the sessions with audio, and then but there is some backup work, it sounds like, too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there is some, like, helping them adjust to the new normal. And how long may that process, generally speaking, obviously, I'm sure it's individuated, but
Well,
how long could that possibly be helpful, that
yeah,
process?
so I have to be clear with the fact that, if you're working on a particular trauma,
Mhm.
you can often get relief from that trauma after however many sessions, 1, 2, 4, 6, depending on the person and the depth of that trauma. But the majority of women that I work with kind of want a total life overhaul.
Yeah.
And so it's not just our sessions together, but it's them doing the homework. It's them using these tools. And I tell people to do 1 to 3 rounds of work on themselves a day. So we're talking 12 to 36 minutes of homework each day to chip away at all of the different neuroses and things that are bothering us. You're annoyed at somebody at work, do a round on that. You've got a relationship issue, do a round on that. You've had a traumatic event, do a round on that. You've got a fear or phobia, do some rounds on that. So it's honestly dealing with all of the different things that are holding you back in life. And that's just the emotion work. Then there are belief tools. So then we have to figure out, what are your limiting beliefs? Start
Hmm.
unraveling those. So then you're doing the rounds on those in between. So it really relies heavily on your ability to do the work and
Yeah.
keep at the act of chipping away at things. I'm really there to answer questions, to help people not freak out when they're suddenly feeling calm and they're not used to it. Um, to help them see the forest for the trees, to help them
Mhm.
know where to get started. A lot of times it's hard when you're being triggered by something to step back far enough from it to figure out what a possible root
Yeah.
of that issue might be. And so that's a big role that I play with people is, okay, I'm being triggered by my boss right now. So yeah, actually I have an example of this. I had a client who couldn't stand her boss. Now, everybody else at her job didn't like him that much either, but she was like especially set off by him and could not let it go and couldn't really function at work very well because of it. So I said, okay, what are the personality traits or behaviors that he's doing that are driving you so crazy? And she said, well, he's really condescending and demeaning to women. And I said, okay, who else in your life has
Mm.
been condescending and demeaning to women? Was your dad like that? Do you have exes like that? And she said, oh, yeah, my dad, this ex, that brother. Like she was just like naming people. And it was like, okay. So you basically are reacting to feeling powerless when a male authority figure is being condescending and demeaning to women, and seeing how powerless you felt as a kid with that, how powerless you feel as an adult in your
Mhm.
workplace with that. And so we had her work on all of that together and all
Yeah.
of the condescending men in her life. And then she was just able to go to work and do what she had to do and not have to be so set off by what he was doing, and she could go back to functioning. And when it's in a situation where you can set boundaries too, I find that instead of making people complacent, it actually does tend to make people kind of stand up and do what's
Mhm.
necessary too. So I find that a lot of people who were afraid to speak up for themselves prior to doing that kind of work will now step up and say something or do something about it to set boundaries or remove themselves from the situation. So it's kind of incredible to see that those shifts.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and you're saying we have the emotion and then we have working on the beliefs. And I was like, well, the third piece is action, but I'm assuming that actually it just happens naturally. Because if
Most
you've
of the
changed,
time.
yeah, if you've changed those things, then you don't have to will
Right.
it. It's just
Yes.
new identity. I behave this way. I take these actions.
Yes.
And it's very
And
natural.
yeah, it's funny you say that because there is a third tool for
Okay.
programming in what you do want. So once I look at the brain like a toxic waste dump or a
Yeah.
plot of land, but it's kind of turned into a toxic waste dump because of all the damage of life. So we remove as much of the toxic waste as we can by dealing with the emotional reactivity and the negative belief programming. And now the land is a neutral plot of land to go ahead and plant whatever garden you'd like to plant there.
Yeah.
So that's where we can start implanting what you do want to believe, how you do want to behave, what you do want to create for yourself, what you want to
Mhm.
manifest. So that's where we would start programming in those positive things. However, the tracks that are removing the negative have so many positive things that are already being
Yeah.
implanted that you often hardly even need the positive tracks for programming things in because you've started to automatically create positives just by virtue of removing the negatives.
Mhm.
But my spiritual metaphysical people who come to see me are usually like just waiting and waiting,
Yeah.
with bated
Manifest,
breath,
manifest.
like, where's the ones for programming in the good stuff? I'm like, we'll get there. And then by the time we get there, they're kind of like, oh, what do I want to work on? I'm feeling pretty good. I don't know what I want, So then we just end up coming with a few things that they want to really fine tune, but otherwise they're pretty much in a decent place and don't necessarily need
Yeah.
to convince themselves of anything anymore. But it is a good follow up tool for when it is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to earlier when you were talking about the creator of the Orpheus mind training, is that the name
Yeah.
of it again? Okay, good.
Orpheus Mind Technologies.
Technologies.
Yes. Hmm.
When you were talking about that, I just want to talk about this piece, which is amazing because I have now for 2-3 years been channeling about spiritual technology and that all of our technology is just a mirror of our spiritual technology. And the way that I kind of work with myself is basically the higher self or the oversoul or whatever is the programmer. And you can
Hmm.
go and sit with the programmer, and which is the subconscious mind really in this
Yeah.
model, and
Right.
say let's rewrite the program. And
Hmm.
the so I just find this so amazing that he the what's his name, by the way? We should give his shout out to his name.
Tim Fizzackerly.
Okay, Tim Fizzackerly. That Tim, I'm gonna say Tim. That Tim, with such clarity, kind of just put that in motion, you know what I mean? And what's interesting is that it seems difficult to just treat it that way, to treat ourselves like technology because we have so much emotional reaction, and yet this
Right.
technology works with emotional reaction. I
Yes.
just think it's amazing. It's just like
Yeah.
an Easter one of those Easter eggs that the universe gives us, but it's hidden in plain sight for us, really.
Exactly. I've been calling it the cheat codes to the video
Yeah.
game of life because
Why
it
not?
makes every level easier.
Right. And because we have been banging ourselves around on that emotional roller coaster, and like you said, we think that we need to be stressed out in order to accomplish something, and that's probably has to do with our conditioning. You would be at home or playing with your dolls, or playing with your army men, and then your mom came along and said, hey, well, I told you to put on your shoes, and it would stress you out in order to make you
Yes.
do something to be a good girl or boy. And that's just that's where we are still with that. In order to be effective and to be a good girl or boy, I have to be stressed out, and that's just the patterning. And
Mm,
it's so much simpler than that, actually.
right.
And
Yeah.
we have a God bless all of our parents, they tried. But we have actually we don't have a bad parent, so far as the universe is concerned. We are allowed to have cheat codes. We are completely loved. We've just created these dramas for ourselves.
Yes. Absolutely.
I love this. This is amazing.
Me too.
So I can't wait to I now I feel like I want to get off this call so I can start
I know.
to get into it.
Well, let
Check
me
out
so
Yeah,
so let
please
me
do.
tell you this.
I wanna hear about how they can work with you and what you're doing and everything else you have to tell us.
Yeah. So the link that I shared with you, which is
Mhm.
apriladams.org/mywork,
Okay.
has a page that says how to do the subconscious work. It has some meditations for empaths on there, a couple of freebies, a couple other things that you can sign up for and purchase. But the one that says subconscious work leads you to a page that is me leading you through a tutorial on how to get the best possible results using these tools, and also a discount code for getting the Orpheus tools for the first month. And now it's a British company, so everything's in pounds.
Okay.
It's typically like £24 a month for their subscription currently, but my discount code gets it for £5.
Mm.
So you can try it out for the first month at that £5 rate, which is
Like
really
Net like
amazing.
Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, like $8, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So, you can try it out and see how it works for you. If you fall in love with it, you can stay on and keep subscribing, or, you can move on from it if you don't resonate. But I do find that if you follow the instructions that I give on how to get long term results with it and things like that, that people tend to have some pretty stellar results. But
Mhm.
if you don't know where to start, if you're having trouble figuring out what the roots are, if you can't see the forest for the trees, if you're overwhelmed by the sheer amount of work to be done, you know, if you want to know how to deal with a particular issue or pattern in your life, or if you want to work with beliefs, because they don't have the belief tracks publicly available, those you have to be working with an Orpheus therapist to access. So, any of those situations, that's where you would want to work with me or one of the other Orpheus therapists to get the best results that you want with it. But it is such an amazing tool just to deal with traumas, phobias, anything that annoys you. And you can go ahead and try it out for yourself in that way. And then I'm here if you want to go any deeper with it.
Wow, that's amazing. And so you're working one-on-one, you have plenty of you have availability to work one-on-one with people, and the link that we have in the description will guide everyone to that whole pathway.
I do, yes.
Yeah.
I am pretty booked up, but I do have space for a few new
Okay.
clients.
Okay.
So, you know, if you're really motivated and you're willing to do the work and chip away at things every day, then that page too, you can apply to work with me there and check that out. But one more thing I wanted to mention, because I did plan to talk about empath stuff with you.
Oh,
And
good. Yes.
so,
Let's do that. I need it always. Yes.
yeah. So when I first started doing Reiki,
Mhm.
I also realized I was an empath.
Mhm.
And I had no
Yep.
idea what that is, but I noticed when I was doing Reiki on people that suddenly I was feeling them. Like I would
Yeah.
go in with my own symptoms, my own issues, and then I would walk in and start working on somebody else. And suddenly all my issues and thoughts and things went away, and I would just feel different.
Mhm.
And so I started talking to those people about what I was picking up on, or I would specifically direct my energy to where I was feeling off and stuff. And I realized, oh, I've been doing this my whole life.
Yeah.
And this is why I was uncomfortable around these people in my life and really comfortable and laid back around these people because I was feeling their energy. And if they're laid back people, I feel relaxed. And if they're stressed out people, I feel stressed out. So around that time, there wasn't a lot of information out there for empaths because
Yeah.
this was 2010 or 11, somewhere around that point. There were like maybe two books out there for empaths at that point. But I was doing all the research I could, and I was doing all the things that they tell you to do and putting up the protective bubbles and all
Yeah.
that business. And I don't know, it's like they give the perception that it's other people putting their stuff on us.
Mhm. Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, I had the realization that it was actually us tuning into them.
Oh,
And
yeah.
now this is being talked about all the time. Like I've seen it on Instagram in the last month, like 5 different times from 5 different people.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad it's being
That
talked about that way. That's
it's
good.
being
Yeah.
talked about as a trauma response and not
Yep.
just an intuitive ability. Now, some
Mhm.
people are trying to separate the two, and I feel it's one and the same
Yeah.
because I think we develop a lot of our intuitive abilities as trauma responses so that
Mhm.
we can cope with the
Yep.
difficult world around us and make sense of it in whatever way makes sense to us. So, for those of us who are very kinesthetic and physical, we will physically pick up on people. If somebody's clairvoyant, they may see visions and visuals of things. I'm not clairvoyant. I'm empathic. I feel. And so, you know, what happens is when we are children, if we have somebody in our lives who is emotionally unstable, we
Somebody,
unconsciously,
one, so one somebody,
somebody or somebody's,
yeah, many
yeah,
bodies.
right.
In my
Yeah.
case, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
We reach out our energetic tentacles and
Yeah.
feel
Oh, that's
into
exactly how I say it. Have
these
you heard me
people.
say that? I say
No.
it's like these. It's like thousands and thousands of little tentacles, and you hook them in. And we don't know about them anymore. And so that's why we were sponging because a sponge has a lot of holes in it, right? Well, that's
Yeah.
your auric field. All of these
Hmm.
tentacles, all these pathways that we've made. Okay, I don't want to interrupt, but I also am
No.
very excited to say that's exactly how I see it as well and talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's amazing. So, yes, we reach out our tentacles and we feel
Hmm.
into like what's daddy's mood like today? Is it okay for me to be loud and playful? Do I have to be good? Should I go hide? What do I need to do
Hmm.
to be safe? And it becomes such this great protective mechanism. We start doing it with everybody everywhere all the time, but we're not consciously aware of it at all. And so we're feeling into everybody else and we're kind of perceiving that it's us, that it's
Yeah.
ours, and
Hmm.
we carry it around. And A clairvoyant person isn't going to do that. Clairvoyant person's going to see an image about what it's about and like who it's dealing with. But with an empath, because we feel it inside our own bodies, we think
Hmm.
it's ours and that there's something wrong with us, when really we're just tuning in and checking into other people. And so rather than putting up protective bubbles, I started pulling in my tentacles. So I would
Hmm.
imagine I was an octopus and just, just pull them in. Or, some people like to see their energy field like a fog and they'll just like suck it in and pull in your
Yeah.
whole fog so that everything's within a foot or two of your body so you're not reaching out. Now, eventually that becomes as exhausting as putting up your
Hmm.
bubbles and putting up
Yeah.
all kinds of barriers. So, I mean, it's a great um, technique to use in the beginning, but eventually that can get as exhausting as anything else you have to stay mindful of, because if you're so used to doing that and you've been doing it your whole life, you're going to have to correct it every 5 minutes.
Yep.
So, who wants to do that? So, that's like step one, as far as
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
concerned.
Yeah. That's emergency.
Yes.
Hmm.
The next thing that I was shown was, and since you've got a spiritual audience, I think they'll
Yeah.
probably know what I'm talking about. But I was shown that there is like this Merkaba, like at the level of the soul. And
Hmm.
so basically, this six-pointed star with a bubble around it just below your heart, like where your soul
Hmm.
is. And
Yep.
if you ground your spirit into you and you picture that Merkaba there around your heart area, and you see it expanding, 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 expanding until it's like a hamster ball around you, then that becomes a filter for negative energy. And so, now I can just like flip that on immediately if I'm picking up on something weird going on around me. And I channeled a message about this, and that Merkaba, it's like, so we all think that we're going to get depleted when we're trying to be an air purifier for negative energy. But it's more like we breathe out, and what we breathe out is toxic to us. But the trees and the plants, they love it. They
Hmm.
slurp that right up. They turn that into oxygen, and we take in that oxygen. That's what it's like for empaths when we take that spirit energy of that Merkaba and start just reprocessing that negative energy around us. So we can transform that energy and have it not only improve the energy that we're running into and whoever that's coming from, but it boosts us too. So it's not
Yes.
depleting us in any way, shape, or form. So that was like level two. That's what I was shown next. And that was right before I started getting all those messages of dealing with the subconscious mind. So
Hmm.
then I start dealing with the subconscious mind. And over a period of time, I'm realizing, oh, I'm not having to turn that on as much. I'm not having to pull in my tentacles as much. And I realized the more of my own neuroses and traumas and fears and worries and whatever that I cleared, I wasn't picking up on that of other people anymore, just automatically because I didn't resonate with it.
Right.
So it's almost like we're going around tuning into other people. Like we're walking around in the world. And if we have something in ourselves that resonates with what they're reacting to, we'll react to it too.
Hmm.
So we can be walking along just fine, happy, peaceful that day, and then run into somebody who's really agitated. And if we have similar triggers to them, suddenly we're agitated too.
Hmm.
But we've done a lot of work on ourselves and we don't have those in our energy field or body, whatever anymore. And we come in contact with them and they're agitated and we don't have any reaction to that.
Hmm.
And so we can better hold space for those people and stay grounded.
Hmm.
And I think that a lot of people are resistant to the idea of not having that
Yeah.
autopilot, empath reaction anymore,
Yeah.
because they think that they're making some kind of difference or that it helps someone for them to take on their stuff. But it couldn't be more opposite.
Right. It's
Like,
becoming the disease. It's not
right,
becoming, it's not being the well being.
right. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you can't hold space for somebody else to heal if you're just jumping on board with their frequency
Yeah.
and being in the illness with them.
Mhm.
So, by healing more of your stuff, you're able to hold space, and it has not removed my empathic ability.
No.
It's just made it
Upgraded it.
something that's no longer beyond my control.
Now
That
it's a
now,
superpower.
yes,
Mhm.
if I want to tune into somebody, I can,
Mhm.
but it doesn't just go around happening at random anymore. And when it does, then I know there's something for me to still work on.
Yeah. I I this is so like the messaging and the way that I teach about empathic skill building empowerment. Like that step 3, I explain is like what we actually want to get to is conscious clairsentience, meaning we turn it on and we're
Yes.
not it's not happening unconsciously. The second stage there, I call that holding the light. So
Mm,
as that Merkaba, is filled, I feel it as like I'm resonating with the higher version of that, and to me, that feels like a column of light coming in, activating the soul part, filled with light that I don't give away. And
right.
now it's like anything that comes across that transmutes it. It's
Yes.
almost like I actually in one of my programs, there's something called piranha acid, and there's a video demonstration that someone does where you can put even a diamond in this acid and it will completely disintegrate it as if nothing had ever been in it, but like it'll do a sponge in like 2 minutes. And so it's like you which doesn't sound enlightened, but you become like
Mm,
piranha acid. That light
right.
is so potent and healing that anything that comes across it you're only made aware of it then to be the light and to be the
Right.
healing. This is
Yes.
so like amazing because because I love that this is where at least, both of us have gotten the similar messaging, and so this is where we are collectively about the empathic, gift, at
Yes.
least, and that's the teaching and that's the leadership about it because I was similar to you, like, when I first learned about it, I didn't I'd the first thing I said was like, "What, like Counselor Troy from Star Trek? Like, what are you talking about?" Like
Right.
and so I was looking it up just like you said, and everything that I came across was like, "You're weak. You're special and weak," and I was just like, I don't
Mm,
wanna I'm not gonna sign off on the fact that I was made broken. I don't want that. I
right.
disagree with that. And I did find someone who, gave me a coaching, and her little tagline is go from, suffering sponge to sensitive savant, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna start there."
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
So, this is so validating is what I wanna say. That's really
Mm,
amazing. So that's how you channeled along your path of needing to be, uh, again, this is I'll share with you something. I don't you
mhm.
probably got a very similar message. The empathic nature is is very much like the autoimmune system of the spirit or of the emotional body at least. Because when it is malfunctioning, it's like having an autoimmune disease because the immune system is supposed to make us well, right? But when it malfunction, it attacks itself.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, probably not synchronistically, a lot of empaths have autoimmune diseases issues, right? They've
Yep.
actually shown up in the body. So the empathic nature is supposed to be a well-being machine. So if we're doing that soul containment light, then it actually, like the trees, it creates more well-being by transmuting it, by breathing out the toxicity.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. And what
yeah.
you're saying about the autoimmune system and the
Mhm.
tendency to have autoimmune issues as empaths. It's fascinating to me because I find that the same people will tend to be people pleasers and let
Mhm.
people walk all over them and practically
Codependence.
give people permission to drain them.
Yeah.
And those are the people that will end up with parasites.
Mhm.
And those who are the people who will end up with spiritual attachments that need to be cleared and released.
Yeah.
So it's like as soon as you learn that it's your job to take care of everybody else, you just unconsciously give permission for everyone and everything to feed off of you. So
Yeah.
it's not just on that physical level with other humans, but it's on the spiritual level, it's on the health level. It's
Yeah.
incredible how much that happens across the board. So we definitely have to do our work to make sure that we have good, firm boundaries on all fronts
Mm-hmm.
to, to say, nope, this is my body, this is my space, this is my energy, and I'm not here to feed anybody else. I can show you how
Mm-hmm.
I learned to set those boundaries, but I can't do it for you.
How many, I mean, I've told empaths, I don't know how many times, when you tell them something like boundaries are loving for others. And it's just
Yeah,
like, I mean, it's like an epiphany because it feels right
right.
just by saying that. And yet at the same time, it's like, really? I have permission to believe that, to not just believe it, but be that? Because the thing is, if boundaries are loving for others because it gives them a reality and they need their reality in
And it
order to do
gives
their
them an
work.
opportunity to stay in your life. And, I
Mhm.
just saw somebody
Yeah.
talking about this yesterday, that boundaries aren't meant to hurt the other person or, give them an ultimatum. It's basically like, I would love for you to stay in my life.
Mhm.
You're that valued to me, but I just can't if this thing continues.
Yeah.
So, to be able to frame it in that way, to recognize, oh, I'm doing this to show them that I do care enough to
Mhm.
want them to stay, because otherwise I could just walk away and shut them out.
And I care enough about them to, it's an intimacy as
Yeah,
well, saying, "This is who I really am. This is me." And this is, and to let empaths or people that have this boundary issues,
right.
you are a gift, and you putting up these, false, I mean, well, not having boundaries or whatever it is, you're, that's not really who you are. And so you
Right.
aren't really giving the gift of yourself.
Yeah.
As well as, I say that the reason that empaths, we don't even know who we are because we don't have any walls up. So how do we know if there's intruders? If we have no boundaries, then we can't say you're on my property. We don't know what our native land even feels like.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
what our
Yeah.
own energy feels like. I
Hmm.
used to be able to take that Myers-Briggs test
Mm.
16 times in a row and get all different ones because I didn't have my own answer.
I like that.
I'm serious. I was
Yeah.
like, this thing is useless. I could answer all
Hmm.
of these.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. This has
Um,
been so enlightening. So you work with
Thank you.
empaths with your system, and do you work with them in other ways? Teaching? Because this teaching is really
Yeah. And,
impactful.
I find that most of the women who
Mhm.
are drawn to working with me are empaths and
Mhm.
or light workers and are interested in these matters. And I've written a couple of books on these kinds of things and stuff like that, and so that is part of any package I do with people.
Good.
I do occasionally have people who are only interested in the psychological portion of it, and that's perfectly fine too. But a lot of people are curious about how they can find empowerment on all levels.
Mhm.
So, for people who are open to it, I do offer some spiritual and empathic coaching and things like
Good.
that too. So, usually I work with empathic women who are having relationship issues. Like, that's really. That's the niche right there. That's the group that tends to be most drawn to me. And also, because that was my issue, I
Mhm.
think that I am also most familiar with dealing with.
Yeah. Wow. This is April. I'm just so delighted to spend this time with you. And I just feel like you're giving so many impactful tools. And so I really
Thank you.
appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you want to share about how people can work with you, or any last thoughts that we haven't covered?
Um, yeah, so just going to the website, apriladams.org. But the page that you'll be going to is
Yeah.
apriladams.org/my work. And then I'm also very active on Instagram. So you can find me there under April Adams Emotion Coach.
Cool. Wonderful. Well, this has been amazing. I appreciate you coming on and
Thank
sharing.
you. I really enjoyed our conversation.
As I said, I have been using the Orpheus mind technology tracks. I'm finding them very effective, as April talked about. And I have used, you want to go to the description here and you want to grab that coupon. It's like a little coupon code that you put in there at checkout, and it's just £5, which comes out to like $7 US. And incredibly, incredibly worth it. I'm gonna stay a subscriber, honestly, because I'm finding it so helpful. I'm going to be a regular user of it. Okay, guys. Well, that's what I have for you on this episode. I hope it was helpful to you because it's really shifted a lot of things with me. You know, our consciousness practice, our emotional and spiritual health and fitness practice is so important. And I have just been moving through a dark night of the soul. Maybe I'll talk about it in a solo episode sometime. And I met April and had this recording right as I was starting to come out of it, and I was in just the right place to get a new tool. And I gotta just say that's just proof. It's just evidence that we are always being supported. Synchrony is our divine birthright, and it's always working for us. It's just sometimes we are in a place where we're moving through something, and we need our eyes to have the lenses cleared up, the veils lifted, so that we can come back into that embrace that honestly we never left, but the embrace of love, the embrace of the universe. So I hope you are experiencing that, and I hope that you are feeling how special and precious and what a gift you are, because you really, really are. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.